Welcome to another episode of what we are calling the Dictators, for lack of a better word. Me and my co-host Jonathan Fink of the Silicon Curtain started this a few weeks ago. Try to do it every Friday, but on occasion when we have a special guest that can't make it on a Friday, we have to rearrange a little bit. So today we have one of those special guests. It's a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. Since retiring, he has become one of the most sought-after geopolitical analysts anywhere. In my opinion, he is one of the true American patriots, and on a personal level, a friend. So again, I welcome Ben Hodges to the Dictators. Welcome again, Ben.
Dave, it's good to be back with you, Dictators.
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully they don't think that we are, but that's up to them. Talking about dictators and nice people. My co-host and co-creator of this, Jonathan Fink, as I mentioned, is not here right now. He is actually caught in one of the airports in Europe that have had significant delays. So he may or may not join us. He's going to do his best. But in the meantime, we're going to have no shortage of things to talk about with Ben. Before I get into the meat of it, Ben, and there's too much to talk about in the 30 or so minutes you have, so I'm going to rush around a little bit. Obviously, we're going to talk about the war in Iran. There's nothing else really that's more top of news. And I have to ask you right on at the top, I'm not going to get into your opinion about anything right now, but one of the stories that catches me and anybody that's been in the military or as an analyst is the fact that we are expending a hell of a lot of sophisticated munitions in this war. And it is a war. I'm sorry. People don't want to call it a war. It's a war. So my first question to you is, and I have an article here. I don't think I'm going to read it, but U.S. races to finish mission before munitions run out. I have no inside information, not an expert, but I don't think that we had planned as long as we should have for this action. And I'm not sure if the munitions that we're using there, that we are prepared for a multi-week or perhaps multi-month engagement. What are your thoughts just on that, on us getting low on these critical munitions?
Well, two or three points about this. It's a great question. Of course, the actual stockages of what we have and what they anticipate expending would be classified. But there were plenty of reports out over the last several days about concerns over how much of the preferred munitions, the precision weapons, including the Patriot interceptors, were on hand. And then, of course, the rate of consumption is based on the missions. So if you don't have clarity of mission, well, what are we trying to achieve? Then it may be difficult to anticipate ammunition requirements. And of course, one of the excuses given for not helping Ukraine with more was always concern that the U.S. did not have enough. But that's been talked about for years. And I do know that some companies are responding and ramping up production, but that has to be driven by the Department of Defense. So I'm approaching this from 3 or 4 different angles. Yes, I'm sure there's not enough. Number 2, the actual consumption should be driven by the mission. And number 3, we don't really have clarity of mission. And finally, number 4, you always need more ammo than you ever thought you would.
You're saying that the current administration, the Trump administration, has not possibly thought this mission through?
I'm saying that it's still not clear. Here we are on day 3, exactly what the strategic outcome is. I hear lots of different justifications. I hear the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth, today giving it saying that the president's got all kind of latitude. He can kind of do what he wants. That's not strategy. And that makes it quite difficult for U.S. Central Command and the Israelis and everybody else to figure out, okay, here's our objective. It will take this type of munitions. So if they can't articulate the desired end state, then I don't know that they have thought it all the way through.
Well, I ask that, of course, tongue in cheek, because I know that's been one of your main gripes, as has many others, about Ukraine, about the Western support, specifically during the Biden administration before Trump, about the lack of a coherent endgame, a coherent strategy in supporting Ukraine. I totally agreed with you then. I agree with you now. Just a brief quote from President Trump. One of the statements he made, I believe, was earlier today. Quote, "The heavy and pinpoint bombing, however, will continue uninterrupted throughout the week, or as long as necessary, to achieve our objectives of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world," all in caps. Do you think it's an achievable goal at this point for the Americans military to achieve peace throughout the world with this mission, this action?
Well, that's an interesting formulation to basically say we're going to bomb the hell out of somebody until there's peace around the world. I mean, that doesn't quite work like that. And of course, it's, everybody that's in the military knows that achieving strategic end state cannot be achieved by military alone. The military is a part of the overall effort of diplomacy, economy, working with allies, all the other aspects of this. No matter how well our great Navy and Air Force may be performing their tasks, their roles, that alone, I don't think can achieve a strategic end state, which would be a lasting sort of peace, which would come from a regime change or a different type of government in Iran that is much more friendly with their neighbors. So I don't think this is a military-only solution, unless the president tells the Congress and the U.S. Population, my desired end state is to destroy as much of Iran's war-making capability as possible, and we're going to do it until I'm satisfied. I mean,
I hear you. No, and I want to say right now, because I always try to get this in when we talk about issues like this. I believe, honestly, we have the best military the world has ever seen. There's no question about it in terms of quality, the word lethality, which is thrown around a lot, training, morale, ethics, whatever you want to say. We have the best military there is. So I have all the confidence in the U.S. military to carry out articulated missions. When given a mission, they will do it, especially if they know what the goal is. And just to let you know, I made several calls today to try to find out exactly what the goal was of bombing, as you said, bombing the hell out of Iran. And I called my good friend, Dan Kane. He didn't return my call. Dan Driscoll hung up on me. And my BFF, Pete Hegseth, you might have heard of him. He sounded a little under the weather, so I didn't pursue it with him. But I couldn't get any answers from my usual sources. So, and I keep harping about this with you because I think it's possibly the most important point in the war in Ukraine, as well as what's going on now. And that is an articulable mission. What is the goal when we go into something like this? And I'll just say it. We don't have one right now in Iran, in my opinion. As you know, the whole point of going into Iran and attacking it and bombing it has changed. The reason has changed from not allowing them to have or pursue their nuclear weapons mission. Now it's regime change. He's told the Iranian people to rise up and change their government. He didn't say exactly how we're going to support them doing that. So I think we are in for a world of hurt for a while, Ben, because we don't have a plan. And we've just unleashed a hydra in the Middle East.
So yesterday, Senator Graham, who's one of the most ardent supporters of the president, Superhawk, he specifically said on one of the Sunday morning talk shows, the goal is to make sure that Iran can never be a supporter or sponsor of terrorism. Mm-hmm. So that was a new objective that was added to what has been said. And so that when you have a lack of clarity, then you have everybody else is trying to figure out, well, here's what it must be. Now, part of the problem, of course, is I believe that the justification for going to war was based on either wrong information or was false. To say that there's an imminent threat, that means, we have hard intelligence that the enemy is fixing to do something really bad, and so therefore we have to stop it. And in international law, to attack another country, just outright attack another country, no matter how evil they are, would be a violation of international law. So unless you are sure that there is an imminent attack about to strike, and then you could legally launch a preemptive strike to stop that. So as it turns out, multiple intelligence sources have said that there is no evidence that Iran was about to have a nuclear weapon or was on the cusp of having ballistic missiles that could reach the United States. So these things, this is what causes people to lose confidence in the overall operation, or to begin to be skeptical. It's why our allies have been reluctant to be open and participate in this, and even the UK at the beginning was reluctant to allow us to use our bases in UK as part of this. So again, this is also why it's so important that the administration consult the Congress to make sure that not only is there congressional support, but when you have to do that, then you have to make the case. You have to explain why we're doing this. And then you can explain to the American people why we're doing this. So far, the polling that I have seen is far below 50% of polled Americans are in support of this.
Yeah, the most recent one I heard, and I forget the name of the poll, but one of the larger polls said that 74% were opposed to the U.S. mission in Iraq, or I keep saying Iraq, in Iran right now. Let me ask you a couple of other points, because we don't have as much time as I would like. All kinds of misinformation, of course, going on out there, which is to be expected. As far as, let's bring Russia into this argument for just a moment. How is Russia, if in any way, getting an advantage out of this? Why is this good or not so good for Russia? Meaning specifically America bombing Iran right now.
That's an interesting question. Two or three things come to mind immediately. Number one, it looks like the price of oil is going to go up, at least for a period of time. That benefits Russia, of course. What they're able to sell to China or India or Turkey or anybody else, if that price goes up, that's revenues for them. Now, I don't know how long that'll last, but no doubt it's upward pressure on oil prices. On the other hand, Russia's reputation as an ally continues to take a beating. They were no help to Syria. They were no help to Armenia. They were no help to Venezuela. And now apparently they're no help to Iran. That tells me that not only for others in the future who might be thinking about Russia as choosing Russia as their ally, it also tells me that they are really under enormous pressure because of their war with Ukraine. So this notion that somehow Russian victory is inevitable is obviously without any legitimacy, because they can't even break loose enough from Ukraine to help all their allies. So I think this is another indicator that Russia is in big trouble. I have not been able to figure out yet, in the bigger picture, strategically, how does this help Russia, except that maybe if U.S. is running so low on precision weapons that it will become increasingly difficult to even sell them to European allies who are then providing them to Ukraine. I don't know how much of this we were still doing, but that probably is going to be under pressure.
Well, that was one of my thoughts also, is that no matter how you look at this, we, United States, are going to have less munitions, less weapons, whether or not Trump even wants to support Ukraine in the future. But if we did, this is certainly going to deplete whatever stocks we had to support Ukraine. So in that way, I think that definitely benefits Russia.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But overall, talking about that, one of the many theories going around or questions being raised is why did Iran start shooting and attacking, the Gulf states, its neighbors, which was not expected, or certainly not expected right away, and not just military targets. As you know, they have hit apartments, they've hit civilian areas, hotels, and so forth and so on in Bahrain and Kuwait, all over, up and down, even Oman. Why do you think they did that? What's the end game there? Is it just desperation, or do you think there's actually a theory or a plan in that?
So, excellent question. Um, I think it's possibly a little bit of both. We don't know how much of the regime actually is still standing. I mean, I've seen reports of how many commanders of the IRGC were killed, and who was with the Ayatollah when he was killed, and so on. But this was a very large. I mean, this wasn't a handful of guys running the country. This was a very large establishment, and the IRGC probably still has significant capabilities. And of course, they're fighting for their own survival, but to stay in power. And they've already come out and said they're not interested in negotiating. So they still have, I think, at least it seems, without classified information, that they are still direct. I imagine some of the ones that want to keep their head down, not draw attention, while the Israelis and the Americans still have plenty of ammunition. On the second aspect of this, though, is I think is kind of what you alluded to. If they can um, drag, if they can widen the scale of the war, then that will put a lot of pressure on the Trump administration, domestic pressure, because this is exactly the opposite of what he promised back during the campaign time. And so here we are in an election year. That could cause some domestic political problems, even and depending on how it goes. So the Iranians trying to expand the scale of the conflict and get nations to put pressure on the U.S. to say, stop this. We didn't sign up for this. But it actually appears that this might be backfiring, that some of the Arab states, the Gulf states, thought that they were in this kind of safe sort of zone, and they're not. And I think that most of them seem to be really, really unhappy with Iran about this, not with the U.S. or Israel, which is interesting.
Well, I of course don't know what's behind their their theory or their reason for doing this, but just a couple of thoughts to follow up. One was I thought that as opposed to desperation, it was a kind of a Russian tactic, which is to create chaos in the Middle East, in that whole region, because this was an unexpected move, even for most of the analysts that I've seen or talked to. It was very, very unexpected. Also, and as I know all of those states have a majority Shia population, for the most part. I'm sorry, Sunni population, but they've got a very vocal Shia minority. And as opposed to what Donald Trump may have thought, and some analysts, even though a lot of Iranians did take to the streets and shout, joy and all of that, Allah Akbar, about the murder, whatever you want to call it, of Khomeini, a lot didn't. And a lot are now rallying around the flag, as they say, and doing what most countries do, Ben. And you know this, when a country is attacked by a foreign nation, even if they didn't really like their government, they generally become very nationalistic. They become very patriotic. And I don't know how far that's going to go. It may last 20 minutes, but that may, I'm just thinking out loud, be one of the strategies of why Iran attacked its fellow neighbors, hoping their Shia minority may rise up and, if not create chaos, force their government either to remain neutral or maybe even to eventually side with Iran. I don't know, but it's a theory.
Oh, I think there's a lot of merit to that. And of course, when you do take out a lot of the leadership, there's going to be some incoherence in responses They probably can't communicate. They are trying to stay low to avoid being targeted themselves, or they're buried under the rubble. And that's why I think it's still going to be a few more days before we have a better sense of who's still standing, who's calling the shots. And also, the Iranian population is going to be perhaps a little bit reluctant to move out into the streets in any large numbers, because they also want to know who's in charge. The same guys that killed thousands of protesters earlier this year. I mean, that's who they're worried about. And they probably also are not real confident that the U.S. is going to stick around and still help them. So I think there's a lot to learn here in the next few days.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, President Trump said that, spoke out specifically, directly to the Iranian people and said, rise up, change your government. We'll have your back. He didn't say how that's going to happen. I know there's a lot going on behind the scenes with our intelligence agencies trying to make that happen over there. I have no doubt about that. But I don't think he's really articulated in the broad sense how we, America, are going to have the back and support the majority of the Iranians to help overthrow and then install a new government. Just overthrowing the old government doesn't always cut it. Then you very often have chaos, like we did in Iraq for many years when the wrong government took over. And it's happened time and time again. In the interest of time, I want to move on to another favorite of ours or mine, China. Mentioned Russia. How do they, come out of this? What's the goal, and how do they? What side are they on? What does China get out of this? I just really quickly. One of the things I think is China's very happy about, not the bombing so much, but they get a chance to see America in action. They get a chance to look at our tactics, and they may. I'm not saying they will. They may get a chance to see how some of their new weapons work against some of our ships, aircraft, and so forth, if they supply them to the Iranians. I'm not saying China's going to be directly involved. They won't. But if they supply any of their newer weapons to the Iranians, especially the Revolutionary Guard, who may actually be in charge now, then they're going to sit back and say, okay, what works and what doesn't? That's very valuable to them.
Very good point. Of course, what's interesting to me is President Trump is scheduled to visit Beijing in just about 3 more weeks, I think, to be his visit to China. And so against this kind of backdrop, this, depending on how it plays out, could affect how the president is perceived. Is it a position of strength, or is this going badly? What's been the impact on the world? So I think that'll be an important part of this, of their visit. Now, of course, China depends on a lot of places for their energy sources. So I can't imagine that they're real happy about disruption of that. But which means they're looking for alternative sources, which of course Russia is one of them. So here's an opportunity to really demonstrate some power by shutting down Russia's ability to export oil, and seeing, this could be some leverage from the American side. I think you're right that they're going to be watching closely to see how we do things. This is a real significant amount of U.S. Sea power here, not just air power, but sea power. And that to me is probably what would be of most interest to the Chinese.
Because of Taiwan, of course.
Exactly. So, what we do, but also, what would they need to do themselves? So I think that President Xi probably is not happy with disruption to the status quo. But at this point, it seems like they have to kind of watch and see.
Lastly, because again, I know we have to wrap this up fairly quickly. What about Europe? What about NATO? There's been a lot in the last even hour or so about the UK. Starmer, and you mentioned this, of course, too, about UK not supporting us, then supporting us a little bit. and he was blasted by Trump for his lack of support. Starmer came out and gave a statement fairly recently. And what about the rest of NATO in general? How do you see this playing out for them, assuming this is going to go on for several days, if not weeks at the very least?
Well, once again, it's demonstrated how much we depend on allies for bases and for access. The Navy depends on Suda Bay there in Crete so much, as we saw this past week. The ability to fly in and out of Germany, of UK, of Italy, Greece, all these places are important to us, and both for support of the Navy as well as air bases, intelligence sharing. And I think this administration takes that for granted more than any I've ever seen. I saw where, again, Senator Graham was complaining that, the Europeans were ungrateful, or why weren't they, piling on and helping? Like, wait a minute, just the other day, you guys were telling Europe they were on their own. And I think I don't blame some countries being a little bit skeptical about this administration, about the reliability of information that it provides as far as the end state and purpose. I mean, the prime minister and the German Bundeskanzler and the French president, they have to explain to their own populations why would they be supporting something that generally almost everybody else sees as an illegal war. And of course, they can all remember the United States decision to go into Iraq. And it turns out that we did not have accurate information. And so I think our administration should have been a little bit more clever about, working with allies if they were counting on allied support.
Which we're not. Again, we're doing this unilaterally, which I think is always a bad decision. It's another, another rift between us and everyone else. I'm a little bit surprised, actually, that the European countries did not come out a little more forcefully against this action, pretty much remaining neutral, with some of them actually giving a tepid support or kudos to America. But I understand why.
They have concerns about Iran, Hezbollah, their proxies, the potential for terrorist attacks in all of these countries. And so I think some of them are trying to figure out what is the risk for them if they come out in strong support, access, whatever. How will that be independent jihadis deciding to take revenge for the death of Khomeini? That these are things that they have to worry about.
Oh, I understand. Like I said, it's not just that, the fact of an increased terrorist activity in Europe, but also really upsetting Trump. They're still not quite sure how to do that. So it's a tightrope, but I get it. It's just unfortunate because this was a harebrained move, in my opinion. This was wrong. I have no love lost for the Ayatollahs. I was on active duty, as I believe you were, in '79. When they took over the embassy and that whole era. So I have no love lost for them at all. But there are, the right way to do things and the wrong way. And in my opinion, this was just the wrong way. You have the last word, Ben.
Well, I was just going to say, 79, I was a cadet. So I wasn't quite on active duty yet. I was right.
Yes. But you were in the game anyway.
Look, I'm so proud of our servicemen and women who are conducting the operations with such skill, but I think they all would want to know, and their families would want to know, okay, so, why are we doing this? And I just, the kind of the language, the tone, the attitude that comes from some of the leadership, the political leadership, is not inspiring to families, and the lack of clarity is what really is most concerning to me. We've lost some soldiers already. Thank God the 3 aircraft that were shot down, apparently the pilots all got out. But it's hard to imagine that there won't be more casualties and more risk. And so sailors and soldiers and airmen deserve to know exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish.
How long is this going to last, Ben? That's the last word.
Yeah, no way would I even guess on that, because
Yeah.
even the president said I could turn it off in 2 or 3 days. So, that's the. I think a lot will depend, obviously, on the reaction coming out of Iran. A lot will depend on the pressure the president is getting from the Congress or from his own population. And then, as always, logistics will begin to impact on what they're able to do.
I hear you. Okay, Ben, I know you've got to go. Thank you so much. Ben Hodges, retired Lieutenant General, U.S. Army and former U.S. Army Europe commander. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to talk with me. And I'm sorry Jonathan wasn't here, but we will catch him with you the next time. Again, take care and stay safe, Ben.
Thank you. This tells you how much I value your program, that I wanted to do it. So thanks for giving me the chance.
You bet. Take care.